More than 70% of all gold ever mined in human history came from the sands of ancient Egypt and its direct sphere of influence. Yet for all its glittering wealth, the true power of this civilization flowed not from its mines, but from the river that sustained it. Settle into a quiet moment. Let your thoughts drift softly away. Allow the ancient echoes of time to reach you. We journey now to a distant era. Imagine the world quieting around you. Breathe gently. Let the whispers of millennia past carry you. Our story begins where a great civilization first stirred. Before the grand pyramids stood silent sentinel. Before Cleopatra's dramatic final act. Even before the very concept of a pharaoh existed. Picture a land. It was a place where the parched desert stretched boundlessly. It was hot and lifeless on both sides. Yet, a vibrant green ribbon of existence snaked through its heart. This was the Nile. Without this sacred waterway, Egypt would have remained an anonymous sandy expanse. With its presence, Egypt blossomed into one of humanity's earliest and most profound civilizations. We will explore this narrative slowly. This is a gentle voyage along the riverbanks. It is not a hurried sprint across the arid wastes. The Nile holds the fundamental secret to understanding Egypt. Each summer, with predictable regularity, the river would surge over its banks. It deposited rich, dark, fertile silt onto the surrounding lands. This damp, abundant soil was ideal for cultivating wheat and barley. This annual miracle prompted Herodotus, the celebrated Greek historian, to famously name Egypt the gift of the Nile. One might suspect the river itself deserved more explicit recognition for its generosity. The ancient Egyptians, in their wisdom, personified the river. They envisioned Hapi, a god with a rounded figure and a benevolent smile. He always carried an armful of crops. He looked less like an all-powerful deity. He seemed more like a cheerful gardener. This was precisely the kind of god one would wish to oversee their vital harvests. The earliest inhabitants of Egypt were not yet architects of pyramids. They were not grand temple designers. Around 6000 BCE, they were simply agricultural communities. They had discovered that proximity to the Nile ensured a far greater likelihood of regular meals. They constructed small, humble villages. They mastered the domestication of animals. They developed irrigation techniques long before such terms were formally conceived. They meticulously dug canals. They carefully stored precious water. They understood that the rhythm of their lives was intrinsically linked to the river's rise and fall. In essence, time itself flowed with the Nile's current. However, where a river thrives, an element of unpredictable chaos often lingers. The Egyptians believed that while Hapi provided abundance, other, darker forces also lurked. Their mythology described Apophis, a colossal serpent. This monstrous being nightly attempted to consume Ra, the sun god, as he traversed the celestial expanse. Fortunately, Ra consistently prevailed. Otherwise, this narrative, and indeed the entire planet, would have met a rather abrupt conclusion. The core lesson was unambiguous. Egyptian life was predicated on delicate balance. Excessive flooding would devastate fields. Insufficient inundation would bring widespread famine. Precisely the right amount, however, ensured bountiful feasts for everyone. This precise equilibrium was later termed Ma'at. It represented the principle of cosmic order. Speaking of order, we must now delve into the earliest attempts to establish it within Egypt. Before Egypt became a unified nation, it existed as two distinct entities. Upper Egypt lay to the south. It was a narrow valley intimately embracing the Nile. Lower Egypt sprawled to the north. It comprised the broad, fertile marshlands of the delta. This northern region was where papyrus reeds grew thick. Water branched into countless channels before merging with the Mediterranean Sea. The geographical orientation might seem counterintuitive on a modern map. The Nile, however, flows northward into the Mediterranean. Thus, Upper designated the upstream region. These two distinct regions possessed their own rulers. They maintained their own customs. They worshipped their own specific gods. Upper Egypt favored Nekhbet, the vulture goddess. Lower Egypt revered Wadjet, the cobra goddess. Both creatures would later adorn the pharaoh's crown. This happened after the two lands were finally united. That pivotal moment, however, remains a story for an upcoming chapter. At this nascent stage, approximately 5000 to 4000 BCE, Egypt consisted of a mosaic of disparate communities. Their funerary practices were modest. They buried their dead with simple pottery, beads, and occasionally a cherished pet goat. Archaeologists refer to this era as the pre-dynastic period. This is a scholarly way of indicating the time before formal organization took root. Yet, even within these unassuming graves, inklings of future developments were visible. The meticulous care with which bodies were arranged suggested profound belief. Pottery painted with spirals and boats, and food offerings for the afterlife, all indicated a conviction that death was not a finality. It was merely a transition. It was like embarking on a ferry across the Nile. This ferry, however, journeyed toward a far stranger, more mysterious destination. Mythology profoundly influenced this early worldview. The Egyptians recounted tales of Osiris, a revered god. His jealous brother Set brutally murdered him. Osiris was later resurrected by his devoted wife, Isis. Osiris subsequently became the sovereign of the underworld. He judged the souls of the deceased. Although this myth attained its full written form much later, its origins likely extend back to these early times. One can readily imagine villagers sharing these stories around crackling fires. They might have advised each other, "Live righteously, honor the gods. Then you will join Osiris in the field of reeds." This was their vision of paradise. It promised endless harvests and an abundant supply of beer. Beer, incidentally, was a staple. The Egyptians brewed it thick and sweet. It was almost like liquid bread. Even construction workers received their wages in loaves and beer rations. It is fair to assert that civilization itself was partly constructed upon barley. Without beer, the monumental pyramids might never have ascended. However, we are moving ahead of our narrative. As centuries flowed onward, mirroring the river's own current, communities gradually expanded. Trade networks broadened significantly. Boats became increasingly refined. They gracefully navigated the Nile, resembling water birds gliding across the surface. Egyptians engaged in commerce with Nubia to the south. They imported gold, ivory, and exotic creatures. From the Sinai Peninsula, they acquired turquoise. This constant movement along the river fostered a shared cultural identity. It led to the recognition of common deities. Eventually, it gave rise to the ambitious idea of a single ruler overseeing the entire land. Religion remained inextricably linked to daily existence. Shrines, often modest mud brick structures, dotted the landscape. They held offerings of bread, beer, and fruit. Divine presence was ubiquitous. Falcons soaring overhead reminded people of Horus. Cats stealthily patrolling granaries suggested Bastet's watchful eye over their sustenance. The perpetual sun reminded them of Ra sailing across the sky. It was a landscape brimming with divinity. Every natural phenomenon was explained through the prism of myth. To modern minds, this might appear fanciful. To the ancient Egyptians, it was as tangible as the sand beneath their sandals. We must also consider the emergence of writing. Around 3200 BCE, Egyptians developed hieroglyphs. These beautiful, intricate symbols would adorn tombs and temples for millennia. Yet, the earliest forms of writing were utilitarian. They were employed for practical accounting. They served to tally grain, livestock, and labor. It seems humanity's initial impetus for writing was not for poetry or grand narratives. It was for the demands of bureaucracy, a rather prosaic truth, perhaps, yet fitting for our historical exploration. Nevertheless, even bureaucracy acquired a sacred dimension. Egyptians believed words possessed inherent power. They called this Heka magic. To inscribe a god's name was to invoke that god's very essence. To carve a spell into a tomb ensured safe passage in the afterlife. Language was never merely a communication tool. It was a bridge between distinct worlds. Life along the Nile continued in this manner for many centuries. It comprised floods, harvests, rituals, and stories. The rhythm was unhurried. It was steady. It was profoundly dependable. Although kingdoms would rise and then eventually fall, and myths would transform, and rulers would change, the Nile's eternal current bound everything together. One could almost characterize it as Egypt's lullaby. It was an endless, comforting murmur. This murmur conveyed a profound assurance to its people. As long as the river flows, life itself will persist. However, existence was not always serene. Animals presented their own inherent dangers. Crocodiles lurked menacingly in the waters. They were both worshipped and deeply feared. They were associated with Sobuk, a god of fertility and ferocious power. Hippos also posed a significant threat. Set, the god of chaos, was sometimes linked to their unpredictable and explosive rage. Imagine living in a world. The very river that sustained you was also home to creatures capable of devouring you whole. This relationship was built upon respect, deep reverence, and a considerable degree of caution. Meanwhile, the celestial tapestry above narrated its own profound stories. Egyptians observed Sirius, the brightest star, ascending just before the Nile's annual floods. They named it Sopdet. Later, they associated it with the goddess Isis. Thus, astronomy and mythology became intricately entwined. This provided people with a vital means to predict the river's behavior. In a land where survival hinged upon accurately timing the floods, this knowledge was nothing short of life-saving. It was, as always, meticulously wrapped in divine narrative. By approximately 3100 BCE, Egypt stood at the precipice of a monumental transformation. Villages had grown into burgeoning city-states. Each possessed its own chieftain, its own priesthood, and its own local deity. Rivalries simmered. Alliances constantly shifted. The two great geographical regions, Upper and Lower Egypt, braced themselves for an ultimate confrontation. The stage was thus meticulously set for the emergence of the first pharaohs. Egypt prepared to step definitively into recorded history. However, dear listener, that compelling tale is reserved for our next chapter. For now, gently close your eyes. Picture the Nile at dusk. The river glows with the reflected light of the setting sun. Farmers return home, their baskets laden with grain. Priests offer solemn prayers at humble shrines. Feel the comforting reassurance that the river will rise again tomorrow. It will rise just as it has always risen. In the profound stillness of that eternal rhythm, Egypt discovered its very genesis. And perhaps within that same soothing rhythm, you might find yourself peacefully drifting toward slumber. When we previously paused, Egypt was in its nascent stages. Villages nestled closely along the Nile's banks. Myths intricately wove themselves into the fabric of daily life. The first subtle indications of kingship were beginning to stir. Now, we turn our attention to elements that lay at the very core of the Egyptian world. These included their intricate pantheon of gods. These encompassed their powerful rulers. And central to all was the luminous concept of cosmic balance, known as Ma'at. If our initial chapter explored the Nile's vital gifts of sustenance, this current chapter delves into the very essence of Egypt's spiritual being. The Egyptians did not perceive their gods as remote, abstract entities dwelling in some distant celestial realm. For them, divinity was interwoven into the very fabric of existence. Each sunrise represented Ra, guiding his solar bark across the heavens. Every annual flood signified Hapi, causing the Nile's banks to swell with life-giving water. And every jackal silently traversing the desert whispered of Anubis, the vigilant guardian of the deceased. This intimate connection between the divine and the natural world rendered life profoundly religious. Yet it also offered a strange, quiet comfort. Imagine never having to question the existence of deities. They were visibly present in the river, in the sun's warmth, and in the cat observing your evening meal. Now, let us delve into the profound concept of Ma'at. Ma'at was not solely a goddess. She was personified as a woman adorned with a feather upon her head. Crucially, she also represented a fundamental principle. She embodied a cosmic law. Ma'at was the very essence that held the universe together. It signified truth, order, and balance. In a world where the Nile's flood could be bountiful one year and sparse the next, Ma'at offered reassurance. It affirmed that, fundamentally, things operated as they ought to. The king bore the sacred responsibility of upholding Ma'at. Here, we observe the unique fusion of myth and kingship that characterized ancient Egypt. For the Egyptians, the pharaoh was more than a mortal man. He was divine. He was the earthly manifestation of Horus. Horus was the falcon god, reigning with acute perception and decisive power. Upon his demise, the pharaoh merged with Osiris, the sovereign of the underworld. His successor simultaneously assumed the mantle of the new Horus. In this intricate manner, the pharaoh functioned as a living conduit between the celestial and terrestrial realms. It was a rather ingenious system. A monarch claiming divine endorsement typically encountered minimal dissent from his subjects. Why should one pay taxes? Because Ra himself commands it. Such an assertion proved difficult to dispute. The pharaoh's role was immense. His responsibilities extended beyond mere political governance. He was expected to meticulously perform sacred rituals. He had to offer sacrifices. He had to ensure the gods remained appeased. If the Nile's flood failed to materialize, the populace might question their pharaoh's actions. Imagine facing blame for the weather every single year. One can only wonder how frequently pharaohs privately lamented the river's capriciousness. Yet, despite immense pressure, the system functioned effectively. It instilled in the people a profound sense that their king's actions were directly linked to the prosperity of the land. Let us now explore the gods themselves. Egypt possessed a truly extensive divine caste. At the apex stood Ra, the resplendent sun god. He held boundless importance in a land where the sun could both nurture crops and scorch fields to dust. Then there was Osiris, the verdant-skinned god of the afterlife. His consort was Isis, the great mother and powerful magician. Her unwavering devotion resurrected Osiris after Set dismembered him. Their son, Horus, with his falcon head and penetrating gaze, epitomized kingship itself. And then there was Set, the much-maligned god of chaos, storms, and the barren desert. He was perpetually cast as the villain. In fairness, traversing the Sahara might convince anyone that chaos and desert are inseparable companions. Temples soon began to emerge throughout the land. These structures were not congregational churches in the modern sense. Instead, they were cosmic engines. Each temple served as a microcosm of the universe. It was constructed to house the tangible presence of a specific deity. Priests diligently performed daily rituals. They bathed the god statue. They clothed it in fine raiment. They presented it with offerings of bread, beer, and meat. One cannot help but find a touch of amusement in the notion of deities being attended to like extremely pampered house guests. Another loaf, Ra? A jug of beer for you, Osiris. Yet these actions were not considered quaint. They were deemed essential for maintaining the delicate cosmic balance. If the gods were pleased, Egypt would flourish. However, kingship was not merely religious spectacle. It also represented a practical system of governance. The pharaoh occupied the highest position within a strict hierarchy. This hierarchy included powerful viziers, regional governors, and indispensable scribes. Scribes merit particular attention. They constituted the literate class. They wielded reed pens and ink. They meticulously recorded taxes, royal decrees, and epic narratives. Literacy was a rare and highly valued skill. Those who mastered it wielded immense power. To write was to actively shape reality itself. Recall that words possessed Heka, a magical force. And then there were the elaborate rituals of kingship. During coronation, the pharaoh donned the double crown. This crown symbolized the unification of the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt. He ceremonially smote enemies. These acts symbolized Egypt's dominance over chaos. He dedicated magnificent statues. He erected towering obelisks. He had his likeness carved into temple walls for all eternity. This might sound excessive. However, the desert proved highly effective at preserving monumental structures. Once an image was carved in stone, it tended to endure. It served as a cosmic business card for future archaeologists. It is pertinent to pause here. We should consider myth as a potent political instrument. The narrative of Osiris, Isis, and Horus was more than a captivating tale. It encompassed murder, resurrection, and divine justice. It also provided a powerful model for kingship. Just as Horus avenged his father and restored order, so too was each successive pharaoh expected to embody Horus. He was to perpetually guard against Set's chaotic forces. Myth provided legitimacy for royal rule. It reassured the populace. It offered a divine framework for the often unpredictable realm of politics. And speaking of unpredictable matters, life was not solely comprised of grand rituals and cosmic order. Ordinary Egyptians lived within this profound religious framework. Yet, their daily lives were filled with more mundane concerns. These included farming, baking, brewing, and weaving. Nevertheless, they invoked the gods in subtle, personal ways. They wore amulets shaped like the eye of Horus for protection. They offered prayers to Bes, the dwarf god of households. With his grinning face and lion's mane, Bes appeared more like a jovial party guest than a formidable deity. However, Bes was deeply cherished. He safeguarded families from illness and misfortune. This synthesis of grand theology and everyday devotion imparted Egyptian religion with remarkable depth. It was not abstract philosophy confined to scrolls. It was a lived experience. The gods were present in the Nile's flood. They were embodied in temple rituals. They were manifest in the amulets adorning children's necks. They pulsed within the very heartbeat of kingship. The worldview shaped by Ma'at and myth also profoundly influenced Egyptian law. Justice in Egypt aimed at restoring balance. It did not solely seek punishment. Court cases frequently considered Ma'at as a guiding principle. Truthfulness and fairness were not merely legal virtues. They were cosmic imperatives. Imagine a courtroom where lying under oath risked not only perjury but also cosmic disarray. Suddenly, honesty appears far more appealing. As the early dynastic period progressed, roughly 3100 to 2686 BCE, Egypt solidified into a unified kingdom. The first dynasties established Memphis as their capital. It was located near the apex of the Nile Delta. From this strategic position, pharaohs governed their expanding state. They conducted elaborate rituals. They fostered extensive trade. They commissioned tombs that grew increasingly elaborate. The nascent stages of pyramid construction were thus initiated. Throughout this evolution, mythology imbued everything with profound meaning. Every act of governance, every harvest, every military campaign was framed in terms of divine order. When Egypt achieved triumphs, it was attributed to the upholding of Ma'at. When drought afflicted the land, it was perceived as a sign that the pharaoh must intensify his offerings. Life was not random. It was an ongoing dialogue among humans, gods, and the vast cosmos. Let us conclude this chapter by revisiting the concept of Ma'at. At the end of life, Egyptians believed the soul faced the weighing of the heart. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, would place the deceased's heart on one side of a scale. On the other side lay Ma'at's feather of truth. If the heart was burdened with wrongdoing, it would tip the scale. The monstrous Ammit, a creature part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, would then devour it. If the heart achieved balance, the soul would pass into the field of reeds. This was a paradise of eternal harvest. This ultimate judgment was not solely about the afterlife. It reflected an entire worldview. Live truthfully, adhere to Ma'at, and the universe itself would remain in harmony. So, in our initial chapter, we witnessed the Nile shaping Egypt's physical form. Here, in this chapter, we observe the gods, kings, and Ma'at shaping its profound soul. Together, they forged a civilization unlike any other. It was a culture that believed the divine was as proximate as the sunrise. It was as constant as the river's flow. With this cosmic order firmly established, Egypt stood poised for its first magnificent age of stone and glory. However, that epic tale, the era of the Old Kingdom, was about to begin. It was an era of unprecedented construction. It was a time of immense consolidation. It would forever define Egypt in the annals of history. Imagine a world. Its leaders harbored aspirations as vast as the desert sky. Its people possessed a collective will as powerful as the Nile's current. This was the birth of the Old Kingdom, roughly spanning from 2686 to 2181 BCE. Historians often refer to it as the Age of the Pyramids. The name is certainly a portent. During this period, Egypt embarked on an architectural journey of epic proportions. It created structures that still confound and inspire us millennia later. The pharaohs of this era were not content with mere mud-brick tombs. They sought immortality in stone. They desired monuments that would pierce the heavens. These monuments would declare their divine status for eternity. The concept of the pharaoh's divinity reached its zenith during the Old Kingdom. The king was not just a representative of Horus. He was Horus incarnate. Upon death, he would ascend to become Osiris. He would then join Ra in the eternal journey across the sky. His tomb, therefore, needed to be more than a burial place. It had to be a celestial launching pad. It was a gateway to the afterlife. It was a beacon for his immortal soul. This theological conviction fueled the construction of the pyramids. It was not just about grandeur. It was about ensuring the pharaoh's eternal passage. This passage was essential for the continued prosperity of Egypt itself. If the pharaoh failed to reach the gods, chaos might ensue. Maat would be disturbed. The Nile might not flood. Such fears propelled the workforce. The first true pyramid builder was King Djoser. He reigned during the Third Dynasty. His vizier and chief architect was Imhotep. Imhotep was a visionary. He possessed unparalleled intellect. He was a physician. He was a scribe. He was an engineer. He was later deified. Imhotep conceived a revolutionary design for Djoser's tomb. It was not a flat-topped mastaba, the traditional rectangular tomb structure. It was a stepped pyramid. It was a series of mastabas, diminishing in size, stacked one atop another. This monumental structure rose majestically at Saqqara. It was the world's first large stone building. It was an astonishing achievement for its time. Imagine the sheer scale of the undertaking. Thousands of laborers quarried massive limestone blocks. They transported them across the desert. They then meticulously stacked them. The stepped pyramid was a testament to organized labor. It showcased sophisticated engineering. It was a symbol of Djoser's immense power. It also laid the foundation for all future pyramid construction. The shift from mud brick to stone was revolutionary. Stone offered permanence. It offered stability. It offered a connection to eternity. Mud brick crumbled with time. Stone endured. Egyptians believed that eternity was their destiny. Their architecture reflected this deep-seated belief. The pyramids were not built by slaves. This is a common misconception. They were constructed by skilled craftsmen, engineers, and seasonal laborers. These laborers were paid in rations of bread and beer. They worked during the Nile's annual inundation. The fields were submerged. This meant they could not farm. They could, however, build. This provided a productive outlet for an otherwise idle workforce. This symbiotic relationship between the river, the people, and the pharaoh's monumental ambitions was crucial. The Fourth Dynasty marked the zenith of pyramid building. This was the age of Sneferu, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Sneferu, Khufu's father, was a prolific builder. He constructed 3 major pyramids. He experimented with different angles and designs. The Mitam pyramid initially collapsed. This was a valuable lesson. The bent pyramid at Dahshur changed its angle mid-construction. This was due to structural issues. It still stands as an architectural marvel. The red pyramid at Dahshur was finally successful. It was the first true smooth-sided pyramid. It set the standard for generations to come. Sneferu was a true pioneer. He perfected the art of pyramid construction. He pushed the boundaries of engineering. Then came Khufu. He commissioned the Great Pyramid of Giza. This structure remains one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It is the only one still largely intact. It stood as the tallest man-made structure for over 3,800 years. Its statistics are staggering. It comprises approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighs an average of 2.5 tons. Some weigh as much as 15 tons. It required an immense workforce. It needed incredible precision. The base covers 13 acres. The sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. How did they achieve this? The answer lies in sophisticated astronomical observations. It involved a profound understanding of geometry. It also required an unwavering belief in their pharaoh's divine mission. The Great Pyramid was not just a tomb. It was a colossal statement, proclaimed Egypt's power. It affirmed its technological prowess. It demonstrated its spiritual conviction. Khufu's son, Khafre, built the second largest pyramid at Giza. This pyramid appears taller due to its higher elevation. He also commissioned the Great Sphinx. The Sphinx is a colossal limestone statue. It has the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh. It guards the Giza Plateau. Its enigmatic gaze has captivated visitors for millennia. It embodies majesty. It represents silent power. It symbolizes the eternal vigilance of the pharaoh. The Sphinx's face is widely believed to be that of Khafre himself. This adds a personal touch to the monumental landscape. Menkaure, Khafre's son, built the smallest of the 3 Giza pyramids. It was still a massive undertaking. His pyramid complex was more elaborate. It featured extensive granite casing. The scale might have diminished slightly. The ambition certainly did not. These 3 pharaohs created an enduring legacy. They shaped the very skyline of ancient Egypt. They erected structures that transcended mere human achievement. They became symbols of an entire civilization. Life in the Old Kingdom revolved around the pyramid complex. These were not isolated structures. They were vast funerary cities. They included temples, causeways, and satellite pyramids for queens. They housed workshops. They contained barracks for workers. They had extensive administrative buildings. A significant portion of Egypt's resources was dedicated to these royal tombs. This concentration of power and wealth in the pharaoh's hands was unprecedented. The government was highly centralized. It was meticulously organized. The bureaucracy expanded exponentially. Scribes became more powerful than ever. They managed supplies. They coordinated labor. They recorded every detail. The religion of the Old Kingdom continued to evolve. Ra, the sun god, gained even greater prominence. Pharaohs were increasingly seen as the sons of Ra. His cult dominated theological thought. Solar temples began to dot the landscape. Their open courtyards were designed to capture the sun's rays. The pyramids themselves were oriented to the sun. They were designed to facilitate the pharaoh's journey with Ra. This celestial journey was paramount. It ensured the continued cycle of life and death. It sustained the cosmic order. Art and craftsmanship also flourished. Reliefs in tombs depicted scenes of daily life. They showed farmers tending fields. They displayed artisans at work. They portrayed priests performing rituals. These images were not just decorative. They were functional. They provided the deceased with all the necessities for the afterlife. Statues of pharaohs were carved with astounding realism. They captured their majesty. They conveyed their authority. The materials were often durable stones like granite and diorite. They reinforced the theme of eternity. Jewelers created intricate pieces. Potters produced fine wares. Everything was imbued with a sense of purpose. It was all designed for permanence. It was all intended for the afterlife. The pharaoh's household was vast. It was a miniature city in itself. It included family members, courtiers, and countless servants. The vizier was the most powerful official. He served as the pharaoh's right-hand man. He oversaw justice. He managed the treasury. He supervised public works. He was the chief administrator of the entire kingdom. Regional governors, called nomarchs, managed the various nomes. These were administrative divisions of Egypt. They collected taxes. They maintained order. They ensured the efficient functioning of the state. The stability of the Old Kingdom was remarkable. It lasted for over 500 years. This long period of peace fostered immense cultural development. It allowed for monumental projects. It supported a complex society. This stability was largely due to the pharaoh's unchallenged authority. It also relied on the efficient organization of the state. The Nile provided abundance. This abundance minimized internal strife. The deserts provided natural barriers. These barriers protected Egypt from external threats. It was a golden age of centralized power. It was an era of unparalleled architectural ambition. However, even the most enduring civilizations face eventual decline. The immense resources dedicated to pyramid construction eventually strained the economy. The power of the pharaoh began to wane. The influence of regional nomarchs grew stronger. They started to pass their positions down through their families. They accumulated personal wealth. They developed their own local power bases. This gradually eroded the pharaoh's central authority. The priesthood also gained significant influence. They acquired vast landholdings. They amassed considerable resources. Their power became a counterweight to the pharaoh. Climatic changes also played a role. Periods of low Nile floods began to occur. This led to poor harvests, caused widespread famine. The people's faith in the pharaoh's ability to maintain Ma'at was tested. If the pharaoh was divine, why did the floods fail? These questions undermined royal legitimacy. The social fabric began to fray. Internal disputes intensified. The Old Kingdom, for all its monumental grandeur, was not immune to the forces of change. The central government struggled to assert control over increasingly independent nomarchs. The vast administrative system, once a strength, became a burden. It was too rigid. It was too slow to adapt. By the end of the 6th dynasty, around 2181 BCE, the Old Kingdom collapsed. It splintered into numerous smaller, independent states. This period is known as the First Intermediate Period. It was a time of disunity. It was an era of civil war. It was a stark contrast to the preceding centuries of stability. The grand, unified vision of the pyramid builders vanished. The centralized power of the pharaoh faded. The monumental construction projects ceased. Egypt entered a dark age of internal conflict. Local rulers fought for control. Chaos reigned. The ideal of Ma'at was severely challenged. The collapse was not sudden. It was a gradual erosion of power. It was a slow unraveling of a complex system. The reasons were multifaceted. They included economic strain. They involved political decentralization. They encompassed environmental challenges. The Old Kingdom served as a powerful lesson. Even the most seemingly indestructible empires are ultimately vulnerable. Its fall was a sobering reminder of the delicate balance that sustained Egyptian civilization. The pharaoh's divine authority, once absolute, could not withstand these combined pressures. Yet the legacy of the Old Kingdom endured. The pyramids stood as silent witnesses. They towered over the shifting sands. They reminded future generations of Egypt's glorious past. The architectural innovations, the advanced administrative techniques, the profound religious beliefs, all these contributions laid the groundwork for subsequent periods of resurgence. The Old Kingdom may have ended in disunity. Its achievements, however, were indelible. They provided a blueprint for future pharaohs. They offered a vision of what a unified Egypt could accomplish. During the First Intermediate Period, the concept of the afterlife also underwent a significant shift. In the Old Kingdom, the afterlife was primarily reserved for the pharaoh. His journey was crucial for everyone's well-being. With the collapse of central authority, this exclusivity began to break down. Ordinary people started to believe they too could achieve an afterlife. They developed their own funerary rituals. They commissioned their own simpler tombs. They hoped to join Osiris in the field of reeds. This democratization of the afterlife was a profound change. It reflected a new societal reality. The pharaoh was no longer the sole conduit to the divine. Individuals could seek their own salvation. This decentralization of religious belief was mirrored in political structures. No single capital held sway. Different regions developed their own unique artistic styles. They fostered their own local cults. The unity symbolized by the double crown was shattered. Egypt was a fragmented land. Yet, Even in this fragmentation, the underlying resilience of the Egyptian people was evident. They continued to farm. They pursued trade. They upheld their traditions. They awaited the return of order. The first intermediate period lasted for approximately 125 years. It was a period of transition. It was a crucible of change. From this crucible, a new vision of Egypt would eventually emerge. The memories of the glorious Old Kingdom still resonated. They fueled a desire for reunification. Regional rulers, though independent, still understood the advantages of a unified state. The ideal of Ma'at still lingered. The aspiration for a single, powerful pharaoh remained potent. This tumultuous era eventually paved the way for the Middle Kingdom. That was a period of renewed strength. It brought artistic brilliance. It ushered in intellectual growth. The Old Kingdom may have ended in strife. Its monumental achievements continue to astound. They stand as enduring testaments to the ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. The pyramids still speak volumes. They whisper tales of pharaohs. They tell of architects. They relate stories of dedicated laborers. They all sought to touch the eternal. The vast necropolis at Giza remains a breathtaking sight. It evokes a sense of wonder. It inspires deep contemplation. It forces us to confront the sheer ambition of humanity. The Old Kingdom, though long past, still casts a long shadow. Its monumental legacy defines our very perception of ancient Egypt. It is a world of incredible feats. It is a realm of profound beliefs. It is a chapter forever etched in stone. Now, consider the daily lives of the non-royals. They were the backbone of the Old Kingdom. Farmers toiled in the fields. They followed the Nile's rhythm. Their lives were challenging. Their existence was profoundly simple. They depended entirely on the annual inundation. A good flood meant survival. Poor flood meant hardship. They paid taxes in grain. They contributed labor for state projects. They lived in mud-brick homes. They ate bread and beer. They valued family. They cherished community. Their world was bound by the river. It was shaped by the pharaoh. It was governed by the gods. Their art reflected their world. It was direct. It was honest. It was rarely glorified. Artisans held a higher status. They were essential for the pharaoh's tombs. They carved the intricate reliefs. They painted the vibrant murals. They crafted the exquisite jewelry. They possessed specialized skills. These skills were passed down through generations. Their workshops were bustling centers of activity. They were often located near the pyramid sites. Their lives were more comfortable. They enjoyed better provisions. They were respected for their craft. Their work was considered sacred. It served a divine purpose. Scribes were the intellectuals. They were the record keepers. They were the administrators. They were literate. This made them powerful. They attended special schools. They learned thousands of hieroglyphic signs. They maintained meticulous records. They managed the vast bureaucracy. They drafted decrees. They composed hymns. They wrote stories. Their pens shaped the future. Their words preserved the past. They were indispensable. They were the information age's pioneers. Women held a relatively high status compared to other ancient civilizations. They could own property. They could conduct business. They could initiate divorce. They were often depicted participating in daily life. They were shown alongside their husbands. They were seen managing households. They sometimes held positions of authority. The concept of Ma'at promoted fairness. This principle extended to women's rights. They were not completely equal to men. They enjoyed significant legal protections. Their roles were vital. They supported the family. They managed the home. They upheld traditions. Children were cherished. They were seen as blessings. They played simple games. They learned essential skills. Boys often followed their fathers' trades. Girls assisted their mothers. Education focused on practical knowledge. It instilled moral values. Respect for elders was paramount. Reverence for the gods was deeply instilled. Life expectancy was not high. Infant mortality was common. Every child was precious. Every life held significance. Even animals played a crucial role. Cattle provided meat and milk. They offered labor for plowing. Donkeys transported goods. Goats supplied milk and hides. Dogs served as protectors. Cats were valued for pest control. Some animals were also considered sacred. The falcon represented Horus. The jackal symbolized Anubis. The cobra was Wadjet. Animals were integral to their economy. They were essential to their religion. They were intertwined with their very existence. The Old Kingdom was a triumph of human organization. It was a testament to collective belief. It built monuments that transcended time. It created a society that, for centuries, was remarkably stable. Its eventual collapse was a complex interplay of factors. It was a human story. It was a divine drama. It was a geological event. The desert swallowed parts of its glory. The sands obscured its grandeur. Yet, the stone remained. The pyramids continued to stand. They reminded everyone of Egypt's first golden age. They signaled a profound human desire. It was the desire for eternity. It was the yearning for immortality. It was the wish to conquer time itself. As the Old Kingdom crumbled, a new chapter began. Egypt faced disunity. It entered a period of transition. The great centralized power diminished. The pharaohs lost their absolute control. Regional governors rose in prominence. Local cults gained followers. The land fractured into competing factions. This fragmentation was not chaos for its own sake. It was a struggle for power. It was a fight for resources. It was a search for a new order. The first intermediate period was indeed a turbulent time. It was a period of unrest. It was a difficult transition. However, it also sparked innovation. It fostered local resilience. It eventually prepared Egypt for its next glorious phase. The seeds of reunification were slowly being sown. The memory of a grand unified past remained a powerful motivator. It inspired a longing for stability. It pushed people towards a future of renewed centralized authority. But that, dear listener, is a narrative that awaits us in the subsequent chapter. The story of the Old Kingdom ends with stones. It concludes with the enduring pyramids. It closes with a reflection on the human spirit. That spirit dared to build mountains. It dared to defy death. It dared to shape the very face of the earth. The spirit continued to linger. It echoed in the empty halls of pharaonic palaces. It resonated in the minds of regional rulers. These rulers now vied for dominance. The centralized power of the Old Kingdom had fractured completely. Egypt was no longer a single, cohesive entity. It was a patchwork of competing nomes. Each nome possessed its own local chieftain. Each chieftain asserted independent authority. This era, approximately from 2181 to 2055 BCE, is known as the First Intermediate Period. It was a time of profound disarray. It was a significant departure from the stability of previous centuries. The collapse of the Old Kingdom left a power vacuum. Regional governors, once loyal administrators, now became de facto kings. They held sway over their local territories. They established their own small courts. They commanded their own small armies. They collected their own taxes. The grand vision of a unified Egypt under a divine pharaoh faded. Local interests overshadowed national unity. This fragmentation led to internal conflicts. Nomarchs frequently battled each other. They fought for control over trade routes. They struggled for fertile lands. The once peaceful Nile Valley became a battleground. Economic hardship became widespread. The vast resources previously dedicated to monumental projects now disappeared. Irrigation systems fell into disrepair. This led to diminished agricultural output. Famine became a frequent visitor to the land. The belief in Ma'at, the cosmic order, was severely tested. If the pharaoh was divine, and if Ma'at was supreme, why did such chaos prevail? The common people suffered immensely. Their faith in central authority waned significantly. They yearned for stability. They longed for the return of abundance. The arts and crafts also underwent a transformation. The unified, grand style of the Old Kingdom gave way to regional variations. Local artists developed distinctive styles. They focused on local deities. They created less monumental, more personal works. Tomb decorations reflected the changing religious landscape. Ordinary individuals, not just pharaohs, now believed they could achieve an afterlife. Their tombs, though simpler, contained spells and provisions for their journey. The pyramid texts, once exclusive to royal tombs, inspired the coffin texts. These were painted inside the coffins of non-royal elites. This democratization of the afterlife was a profound social shift. It granted hope to a wider populace. Religion became more localized. While Ra remained important, regional gods gained prominence. Local communities offered fervent prayers to their specific deities. They sought protection from hardship. They implored for better harvests. Priests in smaller temples gained increased influence. Their roles became vital for community well-being. The emphasis shifted from a distant, divine pharaoh to more immediate, accessible divine forces. This change in religious focus mirrored the political fragmentation. The decline of central authority also affected foreign relations. Egypt's borders, once secure, became vulnerable. Nubia to the south, traditionally a source of gold and raw materials, reasserted its independence. Nomadic groups from the east began to raid the delta. The once formidable Egyptian military, largely disbanded, could not effectively protect the realm. Trade routes became less secure. This further exacerbated economic woes. Egypt, once a beacon of power, was now a shadow of its former self. Yet, amidst this turbulence, seeds of change were being sown. The various nomarchs, despite their rivalries, recognized the long-term disadvantages of disunity. The memory of the old kingdom's glory lingered. It served as a powerful reminder of what a united Egypt could achieve. The desire for a return to Ma'at, to cosmic order and stability, remained strong. This longing for unity eventually led to the rise of new, powerful families. These families began to consolidate power within their own regions. One such family emerged in Upper Egypt. Their city was Thebes. The rulers of Thebes, known as the 11th dynasty, gradually extended their influence northward. They were ambitious. They were determined. They were driven by a vision of a reunited Egypt. Their efforts marked the beginning of the end for the first intermediate period. They embarked on a slow, arduous process of conquest and negotiation. They aimed to bring all of Egypt under their dominion once again. The struggle for reunification was not swift. It involved decades of intermittent warfare. The Theban rulers clashed with other powerful nomarchs. The most formidable rivals were based in Heracleopolis. The Heracleopolitan kings controlled much of Middle Egypt. They posed a significant challenge. The Theban forces, however, proved relentless. Their generals were skilled. Their soldiers were motivated. They fought for more than just territory. They fought for the restoration of a sacred ideal. Eventually, under the leadership of Mentuhotep II, Thebes emerged victorious. Mentuhotep II was a pivotal figure. He defeated the Heracleopolitan kings. He successfully reunified Egypt. He brought an end to the first intermediate period. This momentous achievement ushered in a new era. It was known as the Middle Kingdom. His reign marked a profound turning point. He restored central authority. He brought peace back to the land. He laid the foundations for a new golden age. Mentuhotep II's reign was long and prosperous. He celebrated his victory by adopting a new titulary. He asserted his divine right to rule. He commissioned monumental projects once more. He built his mortuary complex at Deir el-Bahari. This was a distinctive and innovative design. It moved away from the pyramid builders of the Old Kingdom. It reflected a new aesthetic. It signaled a new vision for kingship. He was revered as a second founder of Egypt. He brought stability after generations of strife. The Middle Kingdom, from approximately 2055 to 1650 BCE, is often hailed as a classical age. It was a period of refined artistry. It saw a blossoming of literature. It brought renewed administrative efficiency. The pharaohs of this era were powerful. They were visionary. They learned crucial lessons from the Old Kingdom's collapse. They recognized the need for a more balanced distribution of power. They understood the importance of engaging with regional interests. The capital was initially at Thebes. Later, it shifted to Ichtai, located near the Fayum oasis. This new capital was strategically positioned. It allowed for better governance of both Upper and Lower Egypt. It was a more central location. The administration was reorganized. A strong civil service was re-established. Scribes once again played a crucial role. They maintained records. They managed the state. They ensured efficient governance. The pharaoh's role evolved. He was still divine. He was still the son of Ra. However, Middle Kingdom pharaohs were often portrayed as caring shepherds of their people. They were seen as guardians of justice. They were not just distant gods. They were actively involved in their subjects' welfare. This shift in royal ideology reflected the lessons learned from the chaos of the First Intermediate Period. A pharaoh needed to be relatable. He needed to be seen as a protector. Trade flourished once more. Expeditions were sent to Nubia for gold and valuable commodities. Trade routes with the Near East were re-established. This brought prosperity back to Egypt. The economy stabilized. Agricultural productivity increased. The Nile's floods, once again, brought bounty to the fields. Ma'at was restored. The cosmic order seemed to have returned. Literature reached new heights during the Middle Kingdom. Texts like The Tale of Sinew and The Eloquent Peasant became immensely popular. They offered insights into Egyptian society. They showcased the richness of their language. They explored themes of morality and justice. Wisdom literature, offering advice on how to live a virtuous life, also thrived. These literary works reflected a more introspective society. They demonstrated a deeper engagement with human experience. Artistic expression was characterized by a new realism. Pharaohs were depicted with more human features. Their faces showed signs of age. They sometimes conveyed a sense of burden. This was a stark contrast to the idealized, youthful depictions of the Old Kingdom. Sculpture became particularly expressive, captured individual personalities, conveyed deeper emotions. This artistic shift reflected the changed perception of kingship. Mortuary architecture also changed. Pyramids continued to be built. However, they were generally smaller. They were often constructed of mud brick with limestone casing. They were less massive than the Giza pyramids. The emphasis shifted to elaborate internal chambers. They featured intricate burial complexes. These complexes contained a wealth of funerary goods. The focus was now on securing the pharaoh's personal journey to the afterlife. It was less about projecting overwhelming external power. The Middle Kingdom was also an era of expansion. Pharaohs asserted Egyptian control over parts of Nubia. They built fortresses to secure their southern border. They exploited Nubian gold mines. This expansion brought new wealth into Egypt. It solidified its geopolitical position. It demonstrated a renewed sense of confidence. The powerful nomarchs, though still influential, were brought under tighter central control. Their positions became more administrative. Their autonomy was curtailed. The pharaoh's authority was reasserted throughout the land. This careful balance between local and central power was a hallmark of the Middle Kingdom. It prevented a return to the fragmentation of the First Intermediate Period. The religious landscape also incorporated new elements. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, gained immense popularity. His cult flourished. Many Egyptians hoped to identify with Osiris in death. They sought to share in his resurrection. Abydos, his cult center, became an important pilgrimage site. The democratization of the afterlife, which began in the First Intermediate Period, continued to evolve. This offered solace to a broader segment of the population. This period was a testament to Egyptian resilience. It demonstrated their ability to adapt. It showed their capacity to innovate. From the ashes of disunity, they forged a new, vibrant civilization. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs skillfully navigated complex political landscapes. They fostered a rich cultural environment. They expanded Egypt's influence. They restored national pride. However, like all great eras, the Middle Kingdom also faced its own challenges. The stability it brought was eventually tested. The growing power of officials, though initially managed, could always pose a threat. The continuous expansion required constant vigilance. The delicate balance between central and local authority was a perpetual negotiation. The first intermediate period, therefore, served as a crucial learning experience. It taught Egypt the dangers of unchecked regionalism. It highlighted the importance of a strong central government. It revealed the enduring power of shared cultural identity. It underscored the vital role of the pharaoh in maintaining Ma'at. Without this period of struggle, the triumphs of the Middle Kingdom might never have materialized. The fragmentation forced a reevaluation of kingship. It demanded a more nuanced approach to governance. It laid the groundwork for a more sophisticated society. The reunification under Mentuhotep II was not just a political event. It was a cultural renaissance. It was a spiritual renewal. It restored the collective belief in Egypt's destiny. It reaffirmed the sacred connection between the land and its divine ruler. The memory of the pyramid builders still resonated, provided a powerful inspiration. The new pharaohs sought to honor this legacy. They built upon its foundations. They adapted it to their own times. The Middle Kingdom represents a bridge. It connects the monumental grandeur of the Old Kingdom. It leads to the imperial power of the New Kingdom. It developed unique characteristics of its own. It forged a distinct identity. It proved that Egypt could not only survive periods of strife, it could also emerge stronger and more refined. Its literature still speaks to us. Its art still captivates us. Its lessons in governance remain relevant. It showed the world how to rebuild. It demonstrated how to thrive once more. The shift in religious belief, from the pharaoh as sole divine conduit to a more accessible afterlife for all, was particularly significant. This change resonated deeply with the populace. It offered a more personal connection to the divine, provided individual hope. The concept of the weighing of the heart continued to be central. It emphasized personal righteousness. It encouraged ethical conduct. This moral framework permeated daily life. The fortified borders in Nubia created a buffer zone. They protected Egypt's valuable resources. They ensured its security. Military expeditions were not solely for conquest. They also served to protect trade. They maintained order in key regions. The army became a more professional force. It was essential for a kingdom with external interests. The Middle Kingdom period offers rich insights. It shows how a society can overcome adversity. It illustrates the importance of leadership. It highlights the enduring power of cultural identity. It reminds us that stability is often hard-won. It is easily lost. It is a testament to the cycles of history. Proves that even in decline, the seeds of resurgence can be found. As the Middle Kingdom matured, its own internal dynamics began to shift. The administrative system grew increasingly complex. The power of local officials, while controlled, remained a potential challenge. External pressures also began to mount. The world beyond Egypt's borders was constantly changing. New powers were emerging. New threats were developing. These factors would eventually test the Middle Kingdom's resilience. Yet, its legacy of literature, art, and administrative innovation would endure. The stories it produced would inspire generations. The ideals it championed would shape future rulers. The Middle Kingdom solidified Egypt's identity. It refined its institutions. It demonstrated its enduring capacity for greatness. It set the stage for yet another period of transformation. This transformation would eventually lead to the Second Intermediate Period. This was another era of disruption. It was a time of foreign occupation. But that too is a story for later. For now, envision the Middle Kingdom. Imagine a period of sophisticated art. Picture a blossoming of profound literature. See a revitalized Egypt. Its pharaohs were wise. Its people were prosperous. Its borders were secure. Feel the renewed sense of order. Sense the re-established Ma'at. Hear the quiet hum of a civilization. It had rediscovered its purpose. It had rebuilt its strength. It had learned from its past. This was a true golden age. It was a period of immense cultural achievement. It was a testament to the human spirit's ability. It was the capacity to overcome profound challenges. The capacity to overcome profound challenges would be tested once more. The Middle Kingdom, for all its glory, began to show signs of strain. Its carefully constructed balance gradually started to unravel. The central authority of the pharaoh began to weaken again. Powerful regional nomarchs reasserted their local control. The administrative system became less efficient. A familiar pattern of decline was slowly taking hold. Economic pressures mounted. The pharaohs struggled to maintain their extensive bureaucracy. They found it difficult to fund their various projects. Foreign trade, while still active, faced increasing competition. The long period of peace had also bred a certain complacency. Egypt's military, while professional, was not always prepared for external threats. These internal weaknesses created vulnerabilities. They opened the door for new actors on the Egyptian stage. Around 1785 BCE, Egypt entered what historians term the Second Intermediate Period. It was another era of fragmentation. It was a time of disunity. Crucially, it was a period of foreign rule. This marked a significant departure from previous millennia. The most prominent foreign power to emerge was the Hyksos. Their name translates to rulers of foreign lands. They were a group of Semitic peoples. They originated from the Near East. They migrated into the Nile Delta. They settled there over many years. They were not a sudden invasion force. They gradually gained influence. They eventually seized control of Lower Egypt. The Hyksos brought with them new technologies. They introduced innovations that would profoundly impact Egyptian warfare. They brought the horse and chariot. The Egyptians previously fought on foot. They used simple bows and bronze axes. The chariot offered speed, provided a mobile platform for archers. It revolutionized battlefield tactics. The Hyksos also introduced superior composite bows. These bows had greater range. They possessed more penetrating power. They adopted improved bronze metallurgy. This allowed for stronger weapons. They established their capital at Avaris. This city was located in the eastern Nile Delta. From Avaris, the Hyksos ruled Lower Egypt. They maintained their own distinct culture. They also adopted many Egyptian customs. They used Egyptian titles. They worshipped some Egyptian gods. This cultural fusion made their rule complex. It was not a simple foreign domination. It was a period of interaction and adaptation. Meanwhile, in Upper Egypt, a line of native Egyptian rulers endured. They maintained their capital at Thebes. These Theban pharaohs formed the 17th dynasty. They were effectively vassals of the Hyksos for a time. They paid tribute. They acknowledged Hyksos supremacy. However, their spirit of resistance never truly died. They harbored a deep desire to expel the foreigners. They yearned to restore Egyptian sovereignty. The political landscape was tripartite. The Hyksos controlled the Delta and much of Middle Egypt. The Theban dynasty held sway over Upper Egypt. And to the south, Nubian rulers in Kush asserted their independence. They sometimes allied with the Hyksos. They challenged Theban authority. This created a complex web of alliances and conflicts. Egypt was deeply fractured. The period was marked by ongoing skirmishes. It saw intermittent warfare between the Thebans and the Hyksos. The Theban rulers patiently built their military strength. They adopted the new Hyksos technologies. They learned to use chariots. They trained their soldiers with composite bows. They understood that to defeat their enemy, they must learn from them. The Theban royal family became the torchbearers of Egyptian nationalism. Their resolve grew stronger with each generation. Seqenenretau was one such Theban king. He famously challenged the Hyksos ruler, Apipi. A surviving papyrus records a dispute. Apipi complained about the noise of hippos in Thebes. This was a thinly veiled provocation. It led to open conflict. Seqenenretau died in battle. His mummy bears gruesome head wounds. This indicates a violent end. He became a martyr for Egyptian independence. His son, Kamose, continued the fight. He launched a bold offensive against the Hyksos. His inscriptions proudly declare his victories. He pushed northward. He captured key territories. He demonstrated the growing strength of the Theban forces. Chamos, however, died before achieving full reunification. The final victory would fall to his younger brother. Ahmose I emerged as the ultimate liberator. He inherited the Theban throne. He led the decisive campaigns against the Hyksos. He relentlessly pursued them. He eventually besieged their capital, Avaris. After prolonged fighting, he expelled the Hyksos from Egypt. He drove them out of the delta. He pursued them into Palestine. This was a defining moment in Egyptian history. Ahmose I's victory was not merely a military triumph. It was a rebirth of Egyptian identity. It inaugurated a new era. This was the New Kingdom. It was a period of unprecedented power. It was an age of imperial expansion. The trauma of foreign occupation left a lasting impact. It instilled in the Egyptians a desire for strong leadership. It created a powerful drive for a secure empire. The New Kingdom, approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE, represents the pinnacle of Egyptian power. It was an era of colossal temples. It saw elaborate tombs. It featured ambitious pharaohs. These rulers sought to ensure Egypt would never again be vulnerable. They adopted a new imperialist foreign policy. They aimed to create a buffer zone around Egypt. They wanted to expand their influence. Ahmose I established the 18th dynasty. He laid the foundation for this new, powerful state. He consolidated his control over all of Egypt. He reformed the administration. He rebuilt the economy. He reestablished trade networks. His reign marked a definitive end to the Second Intermediate Period. It ushered in a period of stability and prosperity. The pharaohs of the New Kingdom were different. They embraced a more militaristic role. They were warrior kings. They personally led their armies into battle. They sought to project power beyond Egypt's traditional borders. This was a direct response to the Hyksos experience. The lesson was clear. A strong military was essential for national security. The religion of the New Kingdom also saw developments. Ammonius, a local Theban god, rose to national prominence. He merged with Ra, the sun god. He became Ammonius Ra, king of the gods. His cult became immensely powerful. The Temple of Karnak, dedicated to Ammonius Ra, grew into a massive complex. It rivaled the pyramids in its scale. This wealth was immense. This priesthood wielded considerable influence. The concept of the afterlife became even more refined. The Book of the Dead emerged. This was a collection of spells and prayers. It was designed to guide the deceased through the underworld. It helped them navigate the dangers. It helped them pass the weighing of the heart. This book was placed in tombs. It was intended for a broader audience. It was not just for royalty. It continued the democratization of the afterlife. The art of the New Kingdom was vibrant. It was dynamic, captured movement and emotion. Wall paintings in tombs depicted vivid scenes. They showed banquets. They portrayed hunting expeditions. They displayed religious ceremonies. Sculpture remained monumental. It also showed a new grace. Artists mastered intricate details. They created breathtaking works. The New Kingdom also saw the rise of remarkable female pharaohs. Hatshepsut was one such powerful queen. She initially ruled as regent for her stepson, Thutmose III. She then proclaimed herself pharaoh. She adopted all the royal titles and regalia. She was often depicted with a ceremonial beard. She embarked on ambitious building projects. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari is a masterpiece. It features colonnaded terraces. It has stunning reliefs. She also sponsored successful trading expeditions to Punt. This brought exotic goods to Egypt. Her reign was a period of peace. It was a time of prosperity. It was a testament to her strength. Her successor, Thutmose III, became one of Egypt's greatest warrior pharaohs. He conquered vast territories. He established Egyptian hegemony over the Near East. He led numerous military campaigns into Syria and Palestine. His armies were formidable. His strategies were brilliant. He created an Egyptian empire. This empire stretched from Nubia in the south to the Euphrates River in the north. Egypt became a true superpower. Thutmose III recorded his victories on the walls of Karnak. These inscriptions detailed his campaigns. They listed the tribute received from conquered lands. His reign solidified Egypt's imperial status. It brought immense wealth into the treasury. It secured Egypt's borders for generations. He was a pharaoh of unparalleled military genius. His successors continued this imperial tradition. Amenhotep III reigned during a period of immense luxury. Egypt was at the height of its power. Diplomacy played a crucial role. He exchanged lavish gifts with other Near Eastern rulers. His reign was characterized by opulence. It featured magnificent building projects. His colossal statues, the Colossi of Memnon, still stand. They guard his mortuary temple. His court was renowned for its splendor. It was a beacon of wealth. It was a center of power. However, even during this golden age, challenges emerged. The immense wealth of the Ammonius priesthood grew problematic. Their influence became a rival to the pharaoh's authority. This created internal tension. The pharaohs sought to balance this power. They tried to maintain their own supreme position. Then came Akhenaten. He was Amenhotep IV initially. He ushered in a period of radical religious reform. He abandoned the traditional polytheistic religion. He promoted the worship of a single deity. This was the Aten, the sun disk. He changed his name to Akhenaten. This meant effective for the Aten. He moved the capital to a new city. This was Akhetaten, modern Amarna. This was a revolutionary act. Akhenaten's religious revolution was profound. It challenged millennia of tradition. It threatened the powerful Ammonius priesthood. He closed temples dedicated to other gods. He defaced their images. He sought to establish a monotheistic state. His artistic style was also unique. It was called Amarna art. It was more naturalistic. It showed elongated figures. It had exaggerated features. It broke from centuries of artistic conventions. Akhenaten's reforms were deeply unpopular with the priesthood. They were largely resisted by the populace. His reign was tumultuous. It caused significant social upheaval. His focus on religious reform diverted attention from imperial affairs. Egypt's grip on its Near Eastern territories began to weaken. Vassal states grew restless. Foreign rivals gained strength. Akhenaten's wife was Nefertiti. She was a powerful figure in her own right. Her beauty is legendary. Her bust is one of ancient Egypt's most famous artifacts. She played a significant role in the Aten cult. She was depicted alongside Akhenaten. She often held equal prominence. Her influence was immense. After Akhenaten's death, his religious revolution quickly collapsed. The traditional religion was restored. The capital returned to Thebes. Akhenaten's name was erased from monuments. His reign was largely forgotten. It was an attempt to expunge his memory. It was an effort to restore order. The Ammonius priesthood regained its power. Then came Tutankhamun. He was Akhenaten's son. He was a boy king. He oversaw the restoration of the old gods. His reign was relatively short. It was politically weak. His fame stems from his remarkably intact tomb. Howard Carter discovered it in 1922. It contained an astonishing array of treasures. These artifacts offered an unparalleled glimpse. They showed the wealth and artistry of the new kingdom. His golden burial mask is iconic. It is a symbol of ancient Egypt. The final rulers of the 18th dynasty struggled to maintain control. They faced internal dissent. They dealt with external threats. The Hittites, a powerful empire from Anatolia, challenged Egyptian dominance in Syria. This set the stage for epic confrontations. The 19th dynasty rose to power. Its pharaohs sought to restore Egypt's former glory. Seti I was a strong ruler. He reasserted Egyptian control in the Levant. He fought against the Hittites. He began construction on the magnificent hypostyle hall at Karnak. His temple at Abydos is renowned for its beautiful reliefs. His son, Ramesses II, known as Ramesses the Great, was arguably the most famous pharaoh of all. He reigned for 67 years. His reign was a period of immense prosperity. It was a time of monumental building. He fought the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh. This was one of the largest chariot battles in history. Both sides claimed victory. It eventually led to the world's first recorded peace treaty. Ramesses II was a prolific builder. He commissioned countless temples. He erected colossal statues. His mortuary temple, the Ramesseum, was vast. The temples at Abu Simbel, carved into solid rock, are among his greatest achievements. They depict him as a divine warrior. They glorify his reign. He had numerous wives. He fathered many children. He embodied the power and grandeur of the new kingdom. His legacy was immense. He left an indelible mark on the landscape. He created an enduring image of the powerful pharaoh. His successors, however, struggled to maintain the empire. The costs of maintaining a vast empire were enormous. Internal corruption began to spread. External pressures continued to mount. The Sea Peoples emerged as a new threat. They were a mysterious confederation of maritime raiders. They swept across the eastern Mediterranean. They devastated established civilizations. They attacked Egypt's coastal cities. Ramesses III, a pharaoh of the 20th dynasty, successfully repelled their invasions. He saved Egypt from collapse. His victory came at a great cost. It severely weakened the economy. It depleted the military. After Ramesses III, Egypt slowly declined. The power of the Ammonius priesthood continued to grow. The pharaohs became less effective. Foreign rule returned in various forms. Nubians, Libyans, Assyrians, Persians, and eventually Greeks and Romans would all exert control over Egypt. The golden age of the new kingdom faded into history. Yet the legacy of this imperial era endured. The grand temples stood as testaments. The elaborate tombs whispered stories. The idea of Egypt as a powerful, unified state remained. The lessons learned from the Hyksos occupation had shaped an empire. This empire, though fallen, would inspire future generations. It would forever define Egypt's place in ancient history. The new kingdom truly represented the zenith. It was the peak of ancient Egyptian civilization. It combined military might. It featured religious devotion. It showcased artistic brilliance, projected political power. It was a response to profound challenge. It was a testament to enduring spirit. It demonstrated the resilience of a people. That people had twice risen from disunity. They had risen to achieve unparalleled greatness. The memory of the Hyksos occupation served as a constant reminder. It instilled a deep-seated fear of foreign dominance. This fear fueled the pharaohs' expansionist policies. It motivated their military campaigns. It shaped their vision of a secure, powerful Egypt. The new kingdom became the ultimate expression of this national ambition. In the next chapter, we will delve deeper. We will explore the daily lives of people during the new kingdom. We will examine their beliefs. We will study their social structures. We will witness the vibrant tapestry of a flourishing society. For now, reflect on the monumental achievements. Consider the epic struggles. Acknowledge the incredible transformation. This was Egypt's imperial age. It was a time of heroes. It was an era of colossal ambition. It solidified Egypt's place as a titan of the ancient world. It etched its story into eternity. It etched its story into eternity. The daily lives of New Kingdom Egyptians, however, transcended the grand narratives of pharaohs and empires. Their existence was a tapestry woven from work, family, and faith. It pulsed with the rhythms of the Nile. It adhered to the timeless cycle of seasons. This vibrant civilization, for all its monumental grandeur, was built upon the efforts of its ordinary people. Consider the farmer. He was the bedrock of Egyptian society. His day began before dawn. He guided his plow, drawn by oxen, through the rich black soil. He sowed seeds of wheat and barley. He maintained intricate irrigation canals. The annual inundation was his blessing. It deposited fertile silt. It ensured bountiful harvests. A bad flood meant hunger. A good flood brought prosperity. His life was hard. His labor was essential. He lived in a simple mud brick house. It was shared with his family. His diet consisted of bread, beer, and vegetables. Fish supplemented their meals. Meat was a rare luxury. His clothes were linen. They were simple and practical. He offered prayers to Happy. He honored Osiris. He hoped for a good afterlife. He paid taxes in grain. He provided corvée labor for state projects. He contributed to the empire's might. Artisans, highly valued in the New Kingdom, occupied a more specialized role. They created the intricate beauty found in temples and tombs. Stone carvers meticulously shaped colossal statues. Painters adorned tomb walls with vibrant scenes. Jewelers crafted exquisite gold and lapis lazuli adornments. Potters produced fine vessels for daily use and funerary offerings. Weavers created delicate linen garments. These skilled individuals often lived in purpose-built villages. Deir el-Medina, for example, was home to the artisans who built the Valley of the Kings. They enjoyed better living conditions. They had a steady supply of food and resources. They often had larger, more comfortable homes. Their work was considered sacred. It ensured the pharaoh's eternal journey. It glorified the gods. It added to Egypt's cultural legacy. Their skills were passed from father to son. Their lives were dedicated to their craft. Scribes remained an elite class. Literacy was a gateway to power and privilege. Scribes managed the vast bureaucracy of the New Kingdom. They recorded taxes. They drafted official correspondence. They composed hymns and literary works. They designed temple inscriptions. They oversaw construction projects. They attended specialized schools, learning thousands of hieroglyphic signs. Their tools were reed pens, papyrus scrolls, and ink. Their ability to read and write made them indispensable. They served the pharaoh. They served the temples. They served the military. They were the intellectuals of their age. Their influence was considerable. Their profession offered upward mobility. Many aspired to join their ranks. Women in the New Kingdom continued to enjoy a remarkably high status. They could own property independently. They could inherit land. They could conduct business transactions. They could initiate divorce proceedings. Royal women like Nefertiti and Hatshepsut wielded immense political power. Non-royal women often managed households. They oversaw servants. They raised children. They spun and wove linen. They assisted in agricultural tasks. They attended festivals. They participated in religious rituals. Tomb paintings frequently depicted wives and mothers. They were shown alongside their husbands. They were portrayed as vital members of society. They were respected. They were influential. Their legal rights were significant. Children were a cherished part of New Kingdom families. They played with toys. They learned from their parents. Boys received education. They prepared for their future trades. Girls learned domestic skills. Respect for elders was paramount. Religious instruction was an integral part of their upbringing. Life expectancy was still relatively low. Childhood diseases were common. Every child was precious. Their future represented the continuation of Egypt. They carried the hopes of their families. The New Kingdom military was a formidable force. It was professional. It was well-equipped. It was highly disciplined. Soldiers were recruited from all social classes. They trained rigorously. They learned to use chariots. They mastered composite bows. They wielded bronze swords and shields. Military service offered opportunities for advancement. Successful soldiers could gain land. They could achieve status. They could earn promotions. The army defended Egypt's borders. It maintained order within the empire. It spearheaded imperial expansion. Its triumphs were celebrated. Its role was vital for national security. Religion deeply permeated all aspects of New Kingdom life. Ammonius Ra, the king of the gods, held supreme importance. His vast temples at Karnak and Luxor were centers of immense wealth. They were hubs of religious activity. Daily rituals were performed. Offerings were made. Festivals celebrated the gods. The Opet festival, a grand procession of Ammonius' cult image, drew massive crowds. It reinforced the connection between the gods and the pharaoh. The afterlife remained a central preoccupation. The Book of the Dead became widely popular. It was filled with spells and incantations. It was intended to guide the deceased through the treacherous underworld. It helped them navigate judgment. It ensured safe passage to the field of reeds. Mortuary temples were built for pharaohs. Elaborate tombs were carved into the valley of the kings and queens. These were filled with funerary goods. They contained mummified bodies. They were protected by powerful magic. The process of mummification itself was intricate. It was designed to preserve the body. It was essential for the soul's eternal existence. Egyptians believed that the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion. It was carefully weighed against Ma'at's feather. This determined one's fate in the afterlife. Magic, or Heka, was an integral part of their worldview. Amulets were worn for protection. Spells were recited for healing. Charms were used to ward off evil spirits. Magicians were consulted for various purposes. Dream interpretation was also significant. Dreams were believed to convey divine messages. The natural world was brimming with divine power. Every phenomenon had a sacred meaning. Homes in the New Kingdom reflected the social hierarchy. Peasants lived in simple, single-story mud brick dwellings. They had flat roofs. They often shared walls. They were sparsely furnished. Wealthier Egyptians lived in larger houses. They had multiple rooms. They featured courtyards. They often included gardens. They had plastered and painted walls. They were built with mud brick. They offered greater comfort. Royal palaces were vast complexes. They contained numerous chambers. They included grand reception halls. They had opulent living quarters. They were decorated with intricate reliefs and paintings. Food and drink were essential for sustenance and celebration. Bread was the staple. It was often made from emmer wheat. Beer was consumed daily by all ages. It was nutritious. It was a source of calories. Wine made from grapes was a luxury. It was enjoyed by the elite. Vegetables, fruits, and fish were common. Spices were used for flavor. Honey sweetened dishes. Meals were usually eaten by hand. They were shared with family. Dress reflected social status and climate. Most Egyptians wore simple linen garments. They were light and breathable. Men wore kilts. Women wore long dresses. Elites wore finer linen. They adorned themselves with elaborate jewelry. Wigs were popular for both men and women. They were made from human hair or plant fibers. They symbolized status. They offered protection from the sun. Cosmetics were also widely used. Kohl-darkened eyes, henna-colored nails, perfumes and oils added fragrance. These practices highlighted a culture that valued appearance. Education was primarily for boys. They started around age 5. They attended scribal schools. They learned reading, writing, and mathematics. They studied literature and history. They learned practical skills for administration. Girls were educated at home. They learned domestic skills. They received moral instruction. Higher education was available for talented individuals. They could become priests. They could become physicians. They could become architects. Leisure activities were important. Egyptians enjoyed music and dance. They played board games like Senet and Mehen. Hunting and fishing were popular pastimes for the elite. Fowling in the marshes provided sport and food. Banquets and feasts were common. They included entertainment from musicians and dancers. Religious festivals provided holidays. They offered communal celebration. Life was not solely labor. It included moments of joy and relaxation. Hygiene was valued. Egyptians bathed regularly in the Nile. They used scented oils. They applied deodorants. They shaved their heads to prevent lice. They wore clean linen garments. Good hygiene was associated with purity. It was considered a mark of civilization. The justice system aimed to uphold Ma'at. It sought to restore balance. Courts heard cases involving property disputes. They judged criminal offenses. Punishments could be severe. They ranged from fines to corporal punishment. Imprisonment was rare. Justice was administered by local officials. It was overseen by viziers. The pharaoh was the ultimate arbiter of law. Oaths were sworn by the gods. Lying under oath was a serious offense. It disrupted cosmic order. The administration of the new kingdom was highly organized. The pharaoh sat at the apex. The vizier was his chief minister. He oversaw two main departments. One governed Upper Egypt. The other managed Lower Egypt. Beneath them were numerous officials. These included treasurers, tax collectors, and granary overseers. The empire was divided into administrative districts. Each had its own governor. This vast bureaucracy ensured efficient governance. It managed the flow of resources. It maintained order across the vast empire. Foreign policy was aggressive and expansionist. The pharaohs maintained a vast network of vassal states. They collected tribute from conquered territories. They engaged in diplomacy with other great powers. Treaties were negotiated. Alliances were formed. The royal court hosted foreign dignitaries. Egypt was a major player on the international stage. Its influence was widespread. Its wealth was immense. The new kingdom's legacy is profound. Its temples and tombs continue to inspire awe. Its art and literature are celebrated globally. Its administrative innovations shaped future empires. Its influence on subsequent civilizations was considerable. It was an era of unprecedented achievement. It demonstrated the heights of Egyptian ingenuity. It was a civilization that balanced earthly power with profound spiritual beliefs. However, the very success of the new kingdom also contained seeds of its eventual decline. The immense wealth generated by the empire fueled corruption. The powerful Ammonius priesthood grew ever richer. Their influence began to rival that of the pharaoh. Maintaining a vast empire was costly. It drained resources. It required a constant military presence. This put a strain on the economy. External threats also began to resurface. The Sea Peoples, a confederation of maritime raiders, posed a significant challenge. Their attacks destabilized the eastern Mediterranean. They weakened many empires. Ramesses III successfully repelled them. His victory came at a great price. Egypt's military was exhausted. Its economy was weakened. The later Ramesside pharaohs struggled. They could not maintain the empire's former glory. Internal power struggles intensified. The authority of the central government waned. Regional officials again asserted greater independence. Foreign control over Egypt's affairs slowly returned. The long, glorious reign of the new kingdom eventually drew to a close. Around 1070 BCE, Egypt entered the Third Intermediate Period. This was another era of fragmentation. It was a time of internal division. The country split into different spheres of influence. High priests of Ammonius effectively ruled Upper Egypt from Thebes. Libyan chieftains controlled the delta. This period saw a succession of foreign dynasties. Nubians, Assyrians, and Persians would all exert control. The once mighty empire was weakened. It was vulnerable. Yet, even in decline, the core of Egyptian culture endured. The gods were still worshipped. The Nile still flowed. The traditions were still upheld. The desire for unity remained a powerful force. The memory of past greatness continued to inspire. The monuments of the new kingdom stood as silent reminders. They testified to a glorious past. They offered hope for future resurgence. The Third Intermediate Period, though marked by political instability, was not entirely devoid of achievement. Artistic production continued. Funerary practices evolved further. The Book of the Dead became even more widespread. Personal piety grew in importance. Individuals focused on their personal relationship with the gods. This was a response to the uncertainties of the era. Libyan pharaohs, who ruled parts of Egypt, sought to legitimize their rule. They adopted Egyptian customs. They maintained traditional religious practices. They even commissioned building projects. This showed the enduring power of Egyptian cultural identity. Even foreign rulers had to conform to its traditions. Eventually, the Kushite or Nubian pharaohs from the south conquered Egypt. They established the 25th dynasty. They viewed themselves as restorers of traditional Egyptian values. They revered the Old Kingdom. They commissioned monumental building projects. They sought to revive the glories of the past. Their rule brought a brief period of renewed strength and stability. However, the world was changing rapidly. New empires were rising in the Near East. The Assyrians, a formidable military power, posed a grave threat. They invaded Egypt. They repeatedly defeated the Kushite pharaohs. They eventually sacked Thebes. This was a devastating blow. Egypt became a vassal state of Assyria. This marked a profound shift. Egypt, once the dominant power, was now subject to foreign imperial might. The Assyrian presence was brutal. It left a lasting scar. The subsequent Persian conquest, under Cambyses II, further solidified foreign domination. Egypt became a satrapy of the vast Persian Empire. This was a period of humiliation for the Egyptians. They resented foreign rule. They yearned for independence. The late period, roughly 664 to 332 BCE, saw periods of native Egyptian rule. They often struggled against foreign invaders. The Scythic dynasty, for instance, managed to expel the Assyrians. They enjoyed a brief renaissance. They looked back to the Old Kingdom for inspiration. They imitated its art. They copied its architecture. They tried to restore past glories. But their independence was always precarious. The Persians returned. They reasserted their control. They ruled Egypt for over a century. Their rule was often harsh. It was largely unpopular. The Egyptians suffered under their dominion. They clung to their ancient customs. They held onto their deep-seated beliefs. They awaited a liberator. This liberator arrived in the form of Alexander the Great. In 332 BCE, he conquered Egypt. The Egyptians welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. He founded the city of Alexandria. It would become a vibrant center of Hellenistic culture. It became a hub of learning. It was a beacon of trade. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented. Egypt fell to one of his generals, Ptolemy. The Ptolemaic dynasty ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years. This was a period of significant cultural fusion. Greek and Egyptian traditions intertwined. The Ptolemies adopted the title of pharaoh. They built temples in the Egyptian style. They worshipped Egyptian gods. They were often depicted in traditional pharaonic regalia. Yet they remained distinctly Greek rulers. Alexandria flourished under the Ptolemies. It housed the Great Library. It contained the Lighthouse of Alexandria. These were wonders of the ancient world. Greek became the language of administration. Greek culture dominated the elite. The native Egyptian population, however, largely retained its language and customs. This created a dual society. The most famous Ptolemaic ruler was Cleopatra VII. She was a brilliant and ambitious queen. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt. She famously allied with Roman leaders. She sought to preserve Egypt's independence. She formed relationships with Julius Caesar. She later allied with Mark Antony. Her story is one of intrigue. It is a tale of love and power. Concludes with her dramatic suicide. After Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, Egypt became a Roman province. This marked the definitive end of ancient Egyptian independence. The Romans valued Egypt for its fertile lands. It became the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. Roman emperors were often depicted as pharaohs. They continued to build temples in the Egyptian style. Yet their rule was purely for Roman benefit. Christianity spread throughout Egypt in the Roman period. It gradually replaced the ancient pagan religions. The Coptic Church emerged. It preserved many elements of ancient Egyptian culture and language. The temples closed. The old gods faded. The practice of hieroglyphic writing slowly died out. The legacy of ancient Egypt, however, did not. Its monuments continued to stand. Its mummies preserved its dead. Its art filled museums. Its influence permeated Western civilization. The concepts of cosmic order, the ideas of divine kingship, the profound belief in the afterlife. All these contributions shaped human thought. The fall of ancient Egypt was not a sudden event. It was a long, complex process. It spanned centuries. It involved internal strife. It included foreign invasions. It saw cultural transformations. Yet its achievements remain timeless. They inspire wonder. They fuel historical inquiry. They remind us of humanity's boundless capacity. That capacity capacity encompasses creativity. It includes ingenuity. It embodies spiritual depth. The story of ancient Egypt is a testament to endurance. It is a chronicle of adaptation. It is a narrative of an unparalleled civilization. It rose from the sands. It flourished along the Nile. It reached for the stars. Its echoes still resonate. They whisper through the desert winds. They speak from the colossal stones. They remind us of a world. It was a world that believed in eternity. It was a world that built to last. The final chapters of Egypt's ancient story are complex. They are filled with successive foreign rules. They are defined by the gradual fading of its traditional identity. Yet, the foundations laid over millennia were incredibly strong. They continue to inform. They continue to inspire. The land itself, the enduring Nile, remained a constant. It nourished, sustained, connected every era. It was the lifeblood of Egypt. It always had been. It always would be. Thus, we conclude our extensive journey through ancient Egypt's long and captivating history. We began with the river's humble genesis. We traversed the monumental Old Kingdom. We navigated the turbulent intermediate periods. We witnessed the imperial glory of the New Kingdom. We observed its eventual decline and foreign subjugation. Every epoch contributed to its profound tapestry. Every ruler left an indelible mark. Every ordinary person played a vital role. The pyramids stand as enduring symbols. They are not merely tombs. They are testaments to human ambition. They are monuments to collective belief. They represent the desire to defy mortality. The temples are not just buildings. They are cosmic engines. They connected humanity to the divine. The art, the literature, the administrative systems all speak of a sophisticated society. It was deeply connected to its environment. It was profoundly spiritual. Consider one final image. Picture the sun setting over the Giza Plateau. The pyramids glow with an ethereal light. The Sphinx gazes eastward. It awaits the dawn. This scene has repeated for thousands of years. It will likely continue for thousands more. In that enduring image, we find the essence of ancient Egypt. It is a civilization that dreamed of eternity. It left an imperishable legacy. That legacy continues to captivate us. It reminds us of our shared human past. It points to our potential for greatness. It whispers tales of a world gone by, a world where gods walked among men, a world built to touch the sky, a world forever etched in the annals of time. This, dear listener, is the unforgettable story of ancient Egypt. It is a narrative that will forever echo. It will resonate across the vast expanse of human history.